If it seems like there are a million ways to play retro games these days, that's because there are. I'm a big fan of the Genesis Mini that came out a few years ago, but if shrinking down consoles is the goal, there are definitely smaller options available. When the Genesis Mini 2 came out last year, I thought it was overkill. I thought they'd already done everything they could do with mini consoles, and this was really unnecessary in my opinion. But because I love options, and I'm a retro gaming addict, I eventually bit the bullet and bought one.
Shut up and take my money!
I also got this incredible hybrid controller. It's called the Big 6. It combines the two Genesis controllers that you know the best, the original 3-button and the updated 6-button, into one really cool wireless beast. I'm also going to slap this Japan-only aesthetic kit on, which puts a Mega Drive CD onto this thing, just to make it look cool. So let's take a look at the Sega Genesis Mini 2 with these fancy little amenities strapped on.
Welcome to Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode. Insert coin to play.
Alright, all this Sega stuff seems like overkill, and it kind of is. But I want to show you first the Genesis Mini Model 1. I loved this thing when it came out a few years ago. I thought it was so cool. I built my own mini Raspberry Pi console in a recent episode. And look at the size comparison between these two. That's just ridiculous how far technology has come to where something so tiny can match something that was already very small. Now, the Genesis Mini 1 was good enough for me. I thought it was great. I thought it captured the essence of Genesis. I didn't know why they released this thing when I first heard about it. I thought the Mini 2 was total overkill and totally unnecessary. So I was thinking, you know, what kind of a stupid person would buy such a thing? Fast forward, here I am holding it. So I guess we learned the answer to that question. But this thing is cool because it has more of a hardcore game selection, I guess you could say. And it also has Sega CD games, which is very cool. It comes in a little sleeve like that. But I'm going to talk more about this later, but the hackability of the first one kind of allowed you to put Sega CD games on it already. And these things, these mini consoles were they're begging to be hacked. And the Model 1 was very easily hacked, and so I have a huge game collection on that one. This one has yet to be hacked. You can see this is coming with an HDMI cable, a micro USB for power, and one single 6-button controller. The Model 1 came with 2 controllers. So this is, in my opinion, Sega taking advantage of the consumer and realizing that they will pay for one controller. And this is actually more expensive than the original Model 1, so kind of a rip-off in that sense. But here's the console itself. Very small, very cool looking. Fits in the palm of your hand. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the two. And this smaller one, the Model 2, is the one that I had in my house as a kid. I did rent the Model 1 from Blockbuster when I was a really young kid. But the day-to-day use was on this Genesis kind of Model 2 version. So take a look at this style kit here. This is very cool, Japan only. It adds on a fake Sega CD or a Mega Drive CD, which I think this should have come standard, like all built together. I don't know why they didn't include this with the Genesis Mini 2. They could have charged $50 more and, you know, it would have been, I think, a high selling point. Because it makes sense that if the CD games are one of the highlights of this console, then you should provide the CD body to just make it make sense. Which is why I wanted this thing so badly. And so I tried to order this from Amazon Japan to Turkey, where I live in Istanbul, and they would not deliver. So I had to ask my friend Hiro, who lives in Okinawa, to order it to his own house in Okinawa and then send it to me directly, which he did. Thank you so much, Hiro. I really appreciate that. Here you can see it comes with a fake CD. This is Sonic CD on just a circular disc of plastic. And this is VR Racing, which is cool. Gray cartridge. I've actually never seen this in person. But unfortunately, that doesn't fit in my model because you can order both the Japanese and American models, and the American model does not allow you to fit that in, weirdly. These are adapters for the 32X adapter and to extend the CD unit if you want to put the Model 1 system, attach that to it, which you can do. So the modular kind of aspect of these systems was always so cool, just being able to, you know, attach and detach the different pieces, the CD, the 32X if you had that. But yeah, I really am happy with this because it really gives it that true nostalgic feel, so that if you do play this thing, you remember that it was indeed a modular system with an attachment. So I'm very happy that the CD door opens really in a nice way too, very realistic. So what you do is you pop off this little side piece, and just like the original, and you just attach it to that little clip part of the CD unit, and it just slides in. It does not clip, doesn't stay attached in like a tight way, so be careful if you have this on the table that you don't knock them off accidentally. But the Model 1 also attaches to this thing, so you just use that included extender piece if you wanted to put that on, and it just fits right in. And again, this is all aesthetic, it's not functional at all, but it really, these units, and that doesn't fit ridiculously, but these units are aesthetic pieces. Like I proved with the tiny Genesis that I made with the Raspberry Pi, it's not really the body of the console that has any relevance to the games themselves. So even the mini unit itself is really just a showpiece. So look at that together. You can put the Model 1 on with this little adapter extender piece. And that's exactly how it was in the original back in the day. I remember getting these from Funko Land a few years after they were already kind of defunct, and building it. And I thought it was so cool that you could just build these things. It's kind of like a transformer. This is the transformer of consoles. And there's the Raspberry Pi. Look at how tiny that is. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so this is the main piece, and very happy with the way it looks. And this here is the Big 6 controller. So like I mentioned earlier, this is a combination of the original fat 3-button controller with the smaller 6-button controller. And I think that's the perfect combination. So this controller by 8BitDo is compatible with Switch, PC, Mac, the original Genesis itself, and both mini consoles. So it's got really good compatibility, I would say, and the build quality is very nice. I've heard some reviews of this thing saying that the D-pad is trash. I wouldn't call it trash at all. I think it's a pretty good D-pad, but it definitely doesn't stack up to the original Genesis D-pad, which was just a work of art. But the same thing goes for the 6-button, which was packed in with this thing. They just can't quite capture that D-pad. The original D-pad was so good. So I really can't hold that against this new one. And what I'm going to do here is just hold up the two mini console reproductions. So here you see the 3-button and the 6-button from the Genesis Model 1 and Model 2 respectively. And they look beautiful. They look the part. They feel the part. But they do kind of lack that D-pad. The original Genesis D-pad was just perfect in my opinion. But with that said, I still think this one is really well made. It feels really good in the hands. It's solid. It doesn't feel cheap. And there is just for your own, FYI, you need to know that this controller will need to be reset if you're gonna try and pair it with the Genesis Mini 2. So don't forget to reset it with that little pinhole in the back. You can use a paper clip or an earring or any thin piece of metal. So here we are in the menu, and this menu looks very similar to the Model 1, but I have to say I think I like the user interface of the Genesis 1 a little bit better. I think it captured that 90s feel a little bit better than this does, but you see you can view the spines and you can view the cases head on, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's frustrating because the Genesis has been reproduced in so many different ways. You can get Genesis collections on just about every console, and so this interface doesn't feel that different from those collections. But of course there are options for scan lines, and I would avoid those. They look like trash on this. But you can do pixel perfect. Wait a minute, can you? Well, you can do, I think you can do the standard aspect ratio, and then you can do widescreen. But again, it's a good enough user interface, and it feels very easy to navigate. But I think the real draw here is the Sega CD games, in my opinion. A lot of these games are kind of obscure choices. I'm not sure why they chose such an obscure list, but Again, these mini consoles are primarily for people who want ease of use, out of the box, plug and play gaming. And so for the average person, this is going to be more than enough of a trip down memory lane. Not everybody wants to configure a Raspberry Pi. Not everybody has the time or the energy or even the desire to do that. So for those people who are just regular people and they had a Genesis back in the day, I would say that this is a good option for them. So I guess I can break it down like this. If you already have a Genesis 1 Mini, don't get this. There's no need to get it. It's overkill. You can get Project Lunar, which is a really easy hack. You can load up your Genesis Mini 1 with every game you could ever want. And this is kind of just really not necessary. However, if you don't have the Mini 1, I would say this is a good choice because the Mini 1 is actually hard to get now. It's not readily available, so I would say this is a very good option. It has more games than the Mini 1 built in, but as far as I know, it doesn't have the ability to be hacked yet and might possibly never have that ability. So something to keep in mind. Now, if you're a more technically oriented gamer, then I would say build a Raspberry Pi or any other number of emulation devices that you can find easy tutorials for on this channel and on much better channels than mine. But for a guy like me, and I know that there are more of you out there who just really love retro games and have this real love for collecting and paying tribute to these old little artifacts from your personal memory lane, I would say this is a really cool device. And I do love the Sega CD attachment. I think that's very cool. So overall, I'm happy with it. I'm glad that I have it. I just would say it's definitely not essential if you already own another means of playing these games. So thank you very much for listening and for watching. I apologize for my voice in this video. I've had a really bad cold all week. I'm trying my best, but I just don't know when I'll have the ability to shoot this again. So I wanted to get it done now. But again, thank you all so much for watching the channel. I appreciate every single viewer and every subscriber. So thanks a lot. And I'll see you next time on Gamers Overdrive Retro Mode. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. Take care.